that's different. Sometimes the courses are voluntary, where people can choose to come. Sometimes they are what is known as compulsory, mandatory, where people have to take the training. But broadly, over the last 10 years, I've probably given training to about 1,500, maybe 2,000 different people. Many of them have left the BBC since. I don't think as a result of my training, but we have a lot of people who join and then leave, but they all get the training about how to use their phones. Not so much about TikTok, I'll be honest. I'm probably twice or maybe 3 times the age of someone who would use TikTok. What I tend to do is training more in the traditional way of filming with a phone. So you have your phone and you film something for a news broadcast, for the main TV news, or for local news, or sometimes for Facebook, but not so much TikTok or Snapchat. But I need to ask you guys, you have a penknife, it can be a very useful tool. So on certain occasions, it does exactly what is needed. On other occasions, you need more equipment. So in the training program I mentioned a short moment ago, we have been giving to our staff, it's about 100 staff at the moment, not just the phone, but all this extra equipment. Because another thing to be aware of is that the phone on its own does a very good job. There are some times when just using your phone means you can blend in. You don't get noticed. You can report from anywhere, and just you and a phone means that you are the same as everyone else. However, there are occasions where all this extra equipment can really make a difference. But it means you might get noticed. You might have someone say, "What are you doing?" Because you have a microphone, you have a tripod, you have a lens, but it means you get better footage. It might look better, but if someone says you're not allowed to be here, you get no footage at all. So sometimes just the phone, sometimes all the extra equipment. But often it can come down to the money, how much it costs to give all that extra equipment. Now, phones can be very expensive, but big cameras are going to be much more expensive. And roughly, for the price of a camera crew, so a camera filmer and a camera, you might get 15 or 20 people given a phone and some kit. And for a lot of organizations around the world, not just the BBC, but elsewhere, money is tight, budgets are low. And when the gap between what a phone can do and what a big camera can do is getting small, it makes financial sense to give 20 people a phone and a bit of kit, as opposed to one person, a big camera, which if they can't get to the story quickly, then they can't cover it. There was recently an example down in the south coast of England where the camera crew were sent down from London, but got stuck in traffic. So a journalist just used his phone, and the footage he filmed with his phone appeared on the national news. Did it look as good as the big camera? Well, the big camera can do some clever things. But because the phone was there, it got the footage. And often that is the important thing. Are we getting the footage rather than does it look absolutely perfect? However, having said that, you need to find the balance. Certainly for news at the BBC, we don't want it filmed vertically. We don't want it shaky. We don't want poor sound. But if the footage filmed on a phone captures a moment, for example, a plane falling out of the sky, shot down by Ukraine, it's a Russian plane that is shot down, we will use that footage even though it may not look brilliant. So there's always this progression. How strong is the footage, and does that overweigh what it looks like? But ideally, we'd like BBC staff to film it as well as they possibly can. But there will be occasions, like if you ever play golf, You don't use a putter when you might want to use a driver, and you don't use a driver when you want to use a wedge. There will be occasions where still the big camera has its role to play. For example, with the royal family, with the Queen of the United Kingdom, journalists and camera crews are not allowed to be near a certain distance of the Queen. But using a phone, the zoom is not that good. But on a big camera, it has a very good zoom. So the camera crew can stay far back, but zoom in. So on occasions, there are still reasons why the big camera is still useful. But you can't take away from the fact that we can't give a big camera to every single BBC journalist who might need it, which is why they all have a phone. Because with a phone, they can do almost everything that they need to do. So for example, I've got a few examples to show you. Recently in Kiev, when the war began, our main international correspondent was in a hotel underground car park and had to broadcast from there on her phone. And look how good the quality is. So we have the presenter in London, and then she speaks to the reporter in the car park underneath the hotel in Kiev.
Let's talk to our chief international correspondent, Lise Doucette. And Lise, as we can see, you, the team, others having to take shelter tonight in a basement.
This is Kiev tonight, what was a vibrant European city, nearly 3 million people. But tonight they've gone underground to take shelter. And
she used, as you can see here, it was just a phone and a microphone. There are lots of pieces of kit you can use to improve the quality of what you film. I mentioned the kit that is given to about 100 BBC staff. It has a very good directional microphone. It has wireless microphones. It has a great light, but this is expensive. If you're looking to improve the content of what you can film with a phone, 3 things you really need are a light, a microphone, and something for stability, like a small tripod or even a selfie stick. You can do good things just with a phone, but if you have a microphone, it will help. If you have a light, it will really help. If you have a tripod, it will help as well. How much you spend on those, well, that's up to you and your budget, but you don't have to spend a lot of money to improve the quality of what you're doing. And on many occasions, we have got footage from a phone which we wouldn't have got otherwise. So number 1 is a van taking a prisoner into court. Now, the court has lots of entrances. We can't put a camera crew at every entrance. So we had 1 camera crew and 4 people with a phone, and one of them with the phone got the van as it went into the entrance near them. Number 2 is a very senior BBC executive who was stuck in heavy snow. I don't know whether you have ever had snow in Bangladesh, but it happens quite often in London. Excuse me. And she was stuck in traffic on the motorway because of the snow. She got her phone out, she filmed, and it appeared at the top of the 1 o'clock news. You can see it says there 13:01. So it's right at the top of the news program. Number 3, that's one of our most senior BBC News reporters. He happened to be on holiday in Thailand when there was a typhoon. And so even though he was on holiday, he was happy to film and do a report about the typhoon. He had his phone, which meant he could do it. He didn't have a big camera. Number 4 was another reporter. He went to a city in Canada for a story. He got off the plane. His camera didn't. His camera got taken by the Canadian authorities. But because he had his phone, he was still able to do his piece to camera. So there are many examples of how the phone helps our journalism. But the last couple of years have made a very big difference to the way we do things. Because in the past, there were no restrictions about what we could film and who we could film and how we could film them. But because of COVID, which is beginning to die down in this country, It's not gone away, but it's beginning to die down. But because of COVID, we had to do things differently. We had to bring our audiences to help. In the past, we would get not great footage from them, but we were grateful for anything. But because we knew we could no longer go to them to film, we had to get them to film for us. And so many parts of the BBC made a little training film to tell members of the public, real people, people like you, how to film on a phone, the very basics. I'm just going to play this so you understand the kind of things we were telling people that they should do.
Isolation. Homeschooling.
I don't know. I know, it's ridiculous.
Social media meltdown.
Hang on one sec, hang on.
And observing social distancing. We're still telling the important stories here on your BBC, taking every precaution with special kit to film at a safe distance. But now more than ever, your footage is really important to us. So how best to film it and get it to us? The first rule is to go landscape. It might be all vertical for selfies and social media, but for TV especially, we need you to turn your phone around and shoot like this. We need steady shots, so the 5-second rule will really help get your footage on screen. Start a shot by holding for 5 seconds. Move for 5 seconds if you need to, then hold for another 5. Sometimes we might want you to do an interview too, either on a laptop or on your phone. Here's an insider secret: you'll look much better in good light from slightly above. So try and raise your laptop on some books perhaps, and have a light source behind it like a window. Use your headphones too as a microphone for the best audio. You can use file transfer sites or social media to send the video to us, and use your local news team's email to contact us. Thanks for going to all this trouble. See you on air, hopefully.
And this was revolutionary. We were telling members of the public how to film on our behalf, because any footage is better than none, but if we can get it to be better, then that would really help. And so, for example, when care workers didn't go home but stayed in care homes to look after old and ill people, we couldn't film there, but instead we got them to film for us.
You all right?
Yeah, I've had a good sleep.
Good.
I decided to completely lock the home down by asking the staff to move in.
And that's the kind of footage we would never have got before. And it's now happening regularly. It's broken the barrier between only BBC staff can film material to go on our news programs. We are happy, if they do it correctly, for people to film for us and to send the footage to us. But we'll talk about that in a moment. Now, I do a training course that can last sometimes half a day, sometimes a full day, sometimes longer. But I've only got a few minutes to talk about some tips about what you should think about when you film with a phone. Now, I've talked already about accessories and how they can help. But I think one of the key things is being prepared, understanding what your phone can do, understanding how equipment can help, thinking in advance, what do I need to film? Maybe making a shot list. So you say, I want that shot, I want that shot, I want that shot, and then ticking them off as you get them, so you know you've got what you've needed. Speaking to your interviewee in advance to get an idea what they might say. So you know, well, they didn't say that, I need to ask them another question. You also need to think about when you film with your phone, how you get the quality to be good. as you saw a moment ago, we gave that sort of training, which went onto the news programs so people could understand. Because the easy bit is pressing record, and you'll get something. Will it be good? It might be, but it might not be. And the problem is many people have those ways of doing things for Instagram and for their friends and for TikTok, which don't really work for BBC News, don't really work for mobile journalism generally. So we have to get people to understand what is the right way to do things and what is wrong. We actually have at the BBC our own app, which means that our staff shouldn't make the mistakes that normal people, shall we say, could make. It has lots of features and functions which are designed to make things work better for our staff. So rather than them filming with any app and editing on any app and sending with any app, it's all done within this one app. And this little video here gives you a bit more of an insight into how it works. And again, in that short video were a few key things to ensure that you have prepared on your phone. For example, having lots of space. If you don't have much space on your phone, you can't film much, no matter how exciting the story is, or you have to suddenly start deleting videos of your family or your friends because you need more space. Also, one very simple one, which wasn't mentioned, is cleaning your lens. Because if you start with a dirty lens, that won't look very good at all. So give your lens a clean, and that will immediately increase the quality of what you get. So we have our own app. It can record video, it can edit video, and it can send video straight into our newsroom systems. And that is a very key point, because everyone has WhatsApp, and it's a great app. Is one of the most popular in the world. But in terms of journalism, it's not great. It's okay for communication, to keep up to date with colleagues and what they're doing and how they are getting on with their story. But as a way of sending content from location back to a newsroom or back to a production office, it's actually really bad. Because one of the reasons that WhatsApp is so successful is it works very quickly. But the reason it works very quickly is it squeezes the footage. It makes everything much smaller. So a video file is squeezed down so it sends more quickly. But because it's squeezed down, it loses most of the quality. And that's true both for the size of the video, how many megabytes, and also the frame size of the video. And on a phone, it will look okay. On a big screen, on a TV or a computer, it will look really bad. So we tell our journalists not to use WhatsApp, but instead to use our own app. So there are many challenges and opportunities in terms of how mobile works across the BBC. There is still some resistance where camera crews think, oh, no, I can't film with a phone. Or news editors say, no, I can't have something on my program because it was filmed with the phone. I think that's an outdated attitude. It's the audience who matter. Are they getting the story rather than what device was it filmed on? And a lot of these objections can be raised, that the footage is a bit jittery, unstable, that there's no zoom, that bit rates which give you extra information in the video are too low. But all of these problems are in the past. Most modern phones now overcome those limitations. And there really should be no barriers to how good footage looks and where it can go. For example, something like this.
The planet responds to emissions, not to promises. So the real test of whether these commitments made here in Glasgow will be enough is if they can be acted upon quickly enough to catch up with the speed at which the world is warming up.
Now, you might be thinking, what was that? That was just a piece of video. It was a very first piece of video to do something different to appear on the BBC. It was in November of last year, not long after the iPhone 13 came out. And what the iPhone 13 can do, and some Android phones, not many, but some, is give what's called bokeh or blur, or the background is not quite in focus. The reporter was very clear, but the background behind her was slightly out of focus. And that is something that previously only big cameras could do. But for the first time, it was done on a phone. Now, there are some issues about the frame rate. It's a bit technical, but ideally for the BBC, we want 25 or 50 frames per second. Cinematic mode only works at 30. But that video broke the ground for being the first one ever using cinematic mode. And hopefully more of that will come in the future, but you need an iPhone 13 to do it. But ultimately, filming with a phone gives our staff the chance to serve our audiences better. Not necessarily just on the main TV programs or on radio. Social media is clearly one of the biggest ways of reaching audiences now. Young people don't watch TV news that much. They like to watch it on their phones through social media. And we have one reporter who does something unique across the BBC, across journalism, as far as I know. And I want to give you just a few minutes of insight into what she does, which might give you some ideas as well. So she's called Anna Holligan, and she works in the Netherlands in Northwest Europe. You may know it better as Holland. And Holland has lots of people riding on bikes. I know bikes are very popular in Bangladesh as well. And to begin with, this was her idea of mobile journalism. Her husband would cycle, and she would sit in the little carrier in the front and work like that. But then she had an idea. And the idea led to this thing called DNFTCP, which is Dutch news. So the news from the Netherlands, Dutch news from the cycle path. They have lots of cycle paths. And so she gave the news to people from the cycle path. It was inspired by another BBC journalist who did this on his phone, giving a news briefing every morning.
Morning. Labour are totally over the moon this morning because they have won the Batley and Spen by-election.
So that was just filmed on his phone and sent to people on Twitter, on Facebook, and other social platforms. And Anna thought, I know, that sounds a good idea. Why don't I do that? And she tried it. And initially, it was a bit rough. It wasn't looking very good.
Hello, I'm Anna. I'm the BBC's reporter in the Netherlands. And inspired by Adam, I'm going to bring you a daily dose of Dutch news from the cycle path.
So it was a bit windy. It was a bit noisy. It was vertical. She was looking down at the screen. Didn't look very good. But over time, she improved. And at one point, it looked like this.
Hello, I'm Anna, and this is your latest dip into Dutch news from the cycle path. First today, non-essential shops have reopened, so spontaneous shoppers can visit without an appointment.
It's only about 90 seconds, 2 minutes of news, but it goes straight onto Twitter, it goes straight onto Facebook, she's now doing a version for TikTok, but she doesn't use a massive amount of equipment. It's literally just a microphone, as I mentioned, a microphone, a clamp, as I mentioned, for stability, and a light so that she can be better seen. She has an electric bike, which really helps, which means she's not out of breath. And it's become a real success. I actually helped her improve it. There's a very clever app on iOS called Double Take, which lets you film with the back camera at the same time as the front camera. So you can show what you're seeing at the same time as filming yourself. And Anna gave it a go. And now Dutch News from the Cycle Path looks like this.
Hello, I'm Anna, and this is your new look, Dutch News from the Cycle Path. First today, the international travel ban has been lifted and replaced with a mandatory 10-day quarantine. Hello, good morning, I'm Anna, and this is your Dutch News from the Cycle Path of the Dunes in The Hague. Hello, I'm Anna, and this is your Christmas message from the Cycle Path, possibly the first ever. I wanted to thank you. When I started filming these videos after dropping my daughter at school, I never for a second expected them to spark so much joy and connect with people all over the world. It has been so humbling, and I certainly didn't expect them to generate a trend among Dutch ambassadors.
This is Dutch News from the London Cycle Path, inspired by Anna Holligan's Dutch News from the Cycle Path.
I'm bringing you the news from the snowy cycle paths in Canada.
In Wellington, a beautiful cycle lane around the harbour, and many more cycle lanes will come in the coming years.
Joining Dutch News from the Hanoi Cycle Path. I hope that we can reintroduce cycling in the whole of Vietnam and especially in cities.
I'm entertaining you from my bicycle on the pavement of Gorodievsky Boulevard in Moscow. Dutch ambassadors all over the world are used to promoting cycling. But in Moscow, this sometimes seems to be a bit of a challenge.
So you had all of these ambassadors to various countries around the world. I don't know whether the Dutch ambassador to Bangladesh is now aware of this, but they are all doing these little recordings on their phone, inspired by the BBC reporter who's doing that as well. And some of her videos get more than 1 million views, which is amazing. And we are seeing more and more BBC journalists doing their own little reports rather than going on TV where there is a limited amount of time. Social media has no limit. And all you need is an idea, a story, a bit of equipment, and a phone, and you could be doing the same thing as well. But in terms of what a mobile journalist does every day, well, to be honest with you, there isn't really a correct answer. There are so many different directions that this could go in. It depends on the individual, where they work, and which outlets, which output, which formats they have to serve. What tends to happen is that they would film with a phone, and then it will be what is called reversioned. So you have one version that might work for television, and then another version which will be cut to work for BBC Online, and then another version which will be cut to work for Facebook, and maybe another version to work for TikTok. One of the limitations, though, of any kind of journalism, not just mobile journalism, is time. Because if you have someone you're interviewing and they only have a limited amount of time, you might only be able to do one interview, one version of the interview with them. If you have lots of time with your guest, you might be able to say, well, look, would you mind? We're going to do one version like that, and then another version like this. And sometimes that might be possible. If you can do that, that's great, because something that is filmed for the platform looks better than something that is cut to fit. But unfortunately, many guests don't have that option of being able to give us lots of time. We only have a small amount of time with them. Now, mobile journalism has been around at the BBC for about 10 or 12 years or so, and I've been around training for most of it. But it's only been in the last few years that things have really begun to improve at speed. There was a trial of about 30 camera crews about 3 years ago, but they went back to the big cameras, which is fine. They are the experts at using their big cameras. They use the phone in addition if they need to, but mostly they use their big broadcast cameras. But we did this project in 2021 with 75 delegates. We did 35 of them earlier this year, and we have 200 more coming later this year. And they will all get all of this kit and the BBC apps, and they will learn how to film content which can go onto regional news, onto social media, and onto BBC Online. So the mobile revolution, while it's taken some time to have a real impact within the BBC, is now really picking up speed. There's obviously always been a lot of footage coming from members of the public, and hopefully it's going to be better footage now they understand how to film. But from our staff, it's beginning to happen a lot more. So we do have more staff who can film with their phone. If they know what to do, they get good content, and hopefully you're learning how to get good content. Clearly, it does help save a lot of money, which can be invested elsewhere. And the extra equipment really does improve things. So that's pretty much what I wanted to tell you this morning, or this afternoon, as it is for you. I hope that made sense. I hope that was interesting. But as Jamil said earlier, we're going to leave a few minutes for questions. But that was a tour of how mobile journalism works to a degree at the BBC and the kind of impact it makes on our audiences. So I'm going to stop my share and throw the floor open.
All right. Thanks, Mac, for your wonderful presentation and for providing an insights from the BBC point of view. And it's really interesting to know how BBC is working, and especially using the PNG app, which is completely or entirely for the BBC staffs. And
I'm afraid so, yes.
And after coming back from Russia, I also discussed about the PNG app for the local news hubs, so they can also produce something like this app to to use for daily purposes, to gather, process, and file stories from the ground. This is a very handy app, and it's a very the good example how the BBC is using for getting faster news and content from the ground. So thank you for sharing the insights, because we have heard so many things about the PNG, but how it works, that is completely unaware personally for me. So, well, thank you for the presentation. Now I move to our students. So I think there are a lot of questions will come up, but to do that, I will ask you to raise your hands virtually and ask questions directly to Marc Settle. All right, so we'll be the first. Who has the question?
They're all shy.
Feel free to ask. Don't feel shy.
The hand raise option is not visible.
Hello. First, raise the hands, then start talking. All right. Otherwise, I can't, understand properly who will be taking the floor. All right. So, Ripon, please.
Thank you. I'm really happy to connect with you, and it's very nice. So I have a question to Marc, please. What are the things keep mind? What are the things to keep in mind when taking pictures or photos during a flood or in a crowded places?
Oh, right. Okay. I mean, I think the main thing is the balance between your safety and the safety of other people, but also getting a good photo, because obviously the closer you get to the action, the better it might look, because if you're far away, the one thing that a phone is still quite bad at is zooming. If you zoom a lot with a phone, the picture quality, whether it's for a photo or a video, quite soon becomes bad. So we tell our journalists, where possible, zoom with your feet, get closer to the action. But we also say, as long as you remain safe. And so there is always that balance between zooming with your feet, so walking nearer to the subject that you want to take a photo or some video of, but not putting yourself into danger. And I can't give you the correct answer about how near or how far you need to be, but that always ought to be a concern in your mind. Can you get the balance correct between getting close enough so you get a good shot, but not endangering yourself? There is no piece of video, there is no photograph worth injuring or hurting or dying for, I think is what I would say.
I got it. I got it. Thank you.
Right. Yeah, Ripon. In mobile journalism, we never say, use your Zoom. So better to go, closer to your subject rather than using the Zoom in your phone. So what Marc Settle answered.
Yeah. Sir, when I take the picture to the maintaining some distance, like on flood, on crime space or crime zone, then if I zoom to my phone to take photos, so my pictures quality will be lost. So what will be happen then?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, one other piece of advice I would give is if you can take video or photos at the highest resolution possible. So there are some apps that let you film at what's called 4K. There are some photo apps that let you take photos of what's known as RAW. And with both of those, whether it's 4K or RAW, it means there's a lot more detail in the original image, which means that you can crop into it, you can zoom into it after you've taken it, and you don't lose the quality. If you zoom with a JPEG photo or a normal video, the quality goes down very quickly. But if you can film at 4K, you can still be the same distance, but then on a computer or on a phone, you can zoom into it afterwards, and the quality should remain very good still. So that gives you another option.
Very, thank you, thank you.
All right, now let's move to Maruf. So Maruf.
Thank you, sir. I have a question to Marc. In one of the video, you said that to go landscape more rather than going in vertical or portrait mode while shooting a video or creating a content. But if you look at the content consumption of today's generation or the audiences, then we hold the phone like this. I mean, vertically or in portrait mode. So we would love to consume I'm talking from the audience's perspective. So the audience would love to consume the content by holding their phone like this way, not by rotating again. That would be more convenient. Don't you think that we should, the journalist, the MOJO should make content vertically more than the landscape mode?
Yes.
Can I interfere with him? Sorry. I'm so sorry. Can I interfere with him? I saw some videos from BBC Media, like they are when upload on some videos on Instagram and Facebook in Bangla Mission. So I saw some vertical videos on Facebook pages, BBC Bangla Facebook pages. So this is the interruption.
Yes, the actual video themselves that you saw may have been vertical, but the question was whether you should film it vertically in the first place. And that is a brilliant question, a very good question. And the answer I would give is it depends on your outlet. It depends where the footage is going. You were right. The video that we saw did tell people to film it landscape. That was because it was for the TV program, the news TV program.
Yeah,
it
right.
wasn't for a vertical outlet. If when you go on a story, your main output, your main outlet is going to be TikTok or Snapchat or Instagram or Facebook, then maybe, yes, film it vertically. But for a lot of BBC journalists, their main output is for TV, where landscape is still the important thing to get. Also, it is a lot easier to make portrait out of landscape than it is to make landscape out of portrait video.
Right.
So we tell our staff, if you film it landscape, we can reversion it. I mentioned that word reversion. We can cut it at different aspect ratios. We can cut it portrait. We can cut it square. If you film it portrait in the first place and it's needed landscape, it's much more problematic. So I don't disagree that, yes, portrait for many platforms, if that is the platform that you're going for. But certainly for a lot of BBC journalists, landscape still remains their main objective.
Yeah, I got my answer, and that's a very constructive answer. Well, I have one other question, like not a question, it's more of a suggestion asking that as you said that there are a lot of institutional support from BBCs, but not all of us are in fact no one of us would get chance to work for BBC because that's so high, but the local media that we have here in Bangladesh, we don't have the institutional support. Like you have PNG, you have most journalists have iPhone, the latest gadgets actually, but we don't have that. So how do you suggest us who doesn't have a high budget iPhone or an Android phone or gadgets, institutional supports, video premium video apps like PNG? So how do you suggest us to do mobile journalism?
Okay,
at least,
well, yeah, I mean, look, it doesn't really come down to the phone that you've got. Yes, it's lovely if you've got an iPhone 12 or 13, as opposed to a Galaxy S2, where the footage won't be quite as good. But it comes down to the story. It comes down to the storytelling. It comes down to the structure. It comes down to the basics. Is it in focus? Can I hear what's being said? Is it well lit? Is it telling me a story that makes sense? If you are filming on an iPhone 13 and you have a boring story, which is badly lit and doesn't sound great, it doesn't matter that it was filmed on an iPhone 13. So what I would do is get good at understanding what your particular phone can do and then use it to tell interesting stories. Because once you've mastered interesting storytelling, if you then get a better job somewhere else, then hopefully a better phone may come with that, which may help you feel better because you have a better phone. But if you're not telling good stories, if you're not interesting your audience, then you're never going to make that progression from working on your own to working with a big institution like the BBC. Any more? Although it is nearly, well, 12 o'clock, 5 o'clock.
Is there any more question? Is there any more questions to Mark? I think
I don't mind if not, that's absolutely fine. I've had some sessions where no one asked questions, so to have a few questions was an improvement.
This is just a curiosity from my perspective, Mark. So what is the current scenario over the UK's media after hitting the COVID-19 in Bangladesh? We have seen that many, especially the TV news outlets, they have asked their journalists to transform themselves, coming with their smartphones and shoot, capture everything, do by yourself. and cut the camera persons, right? So there is a transition is happening here in Bangladesh. So what is the scenario, particularly in the UK's media?
Look, the BBC, despite having lots of cutbacks over the years, remains a moderately wealthy organization, which means that when stories happen, we can send camera crews, we can buy local camera crews to cover the story, because ultimately, if we can still afford, then the big cameras are still able to do some things which a phone can't do. But what we're trying to get more people to understand is that if the camera crew can't get to the story in time, you don't just say, oh, well, we can't cover the story. You film it on your phone. You send it back using PNG. It gets straight back into our newsroom systems. It's breaking the barrier between we don't have a crew, we can't cover the story, and we have a reporter who's on site with a phone, they can do it. So, you know, where possible, we will still use camera crews. But where we can, or where we need to, then we'll get footage with phones. And that applies to all media because, as mentioned, the gap is narrow. And ultimately, if you get the story, even if it's filmed by a reporter using an older phone, that will ultimately be much more important than, well, we did try to get a camera crew there, but they got stuck in traffic, so we didn't get any footage at all. And that's always going to be the case.
And another experience from our country, that is, there is a dilemma here in Bangladesh, and also the attitude that we have here, that there is a differences between the television crews and the people who are using smartphones and gadgets. So people who are using big cameras, big tripods, they are neglecting the people who are usually using smartphones for their storytelling, right? And there are even some debates are happening in the ground when they're covering the same events. And the TV crews, they are not giving the more spaces to the journalists who are using the smartphones. So how are, we can change this, the scenario and the dilemma and the debate, all sort of things?
Well, yeah, I mean, there always will be attitudes, and almost by definition, a lot of the camera crews filming with big cameras tend to be a bit older, more experienced. And so they look at people filming with phones and saying, haha, is that all you've got? But there are situations where a big camera causes problems. If there's a riot, or you have to film in an airport where normally having a big camera draws attention to yourself. So there are occasions where filming with a phone means you get footage where if you try to get it with a big camera, it's not going to work. But yes, there will still be some attitudes where camera crews are going to look not in a very kind way at people filming with a phone, because often it could be anyone. It isn't an official camera person. It could just be a passerby. How do you know the difference between a passerby filming on a phone and a real journalist employed by a newspaper who happens to use a phone? Whereas a camera, that gives authority. It means I am a real official person. But that's attitude. And that may take some time to change.
It's all about the attitude and the mindset, right? And what Mr. Glenn usually says that, yes, mobile journalism is all about the person who tells the stories. Don't think much more about the gadgets.
Yeah, totally. As I say, yeah, it's a piece of technology. Yeah. It does some things better than a big camera, not everything, but it can help tell stories. I mean, there are many examples where if you turn up just with a phone, the person that you're interviewing may be more welcoming, more understanding. They don't feel so nervous. They will let you film them. They might talk to you more. Whereas if you turn up with a big camera and a sound man and a lights and everything, they go and they forget what they want to say, or they say, no, I'm sorry, I'm too nervous now. So yeah, there are occasions where the phone gets you content that otherwise you might not get.
Yeah, absolutely. I do also agree with you. What actually done by Panu Karunin, the Finnish journalist, maybe you also read his research, jointly worked with the Reuters. So with mobile journalism, we can come closer to the story, right?
Yes, I helped supervise that piece of work. So yes, I was aware of what he did. Yes.
All right. So that was really interesting study that we have on mobile journalism field.
Yeah.
All right. We have moved over probably the last question, and I think there is a hand raised. So Bijoy, so could you please ask question?
How we can join BBC? Is there any way to get training at BBC journalism school, or that's only for the journalist?
Yes, I'm sorry. It is only available for employees, for people who currently work for the BBC. There are lots of what are called placements or temporary jobs where you can come and work for 2 or 3 weeks and then see how we work. Not at the BBC Academy, but at the BBC generally. But of course, almost all of these will happen in the UK, in London, in Manchester, in Glasgow, in Scotland, where we have all our big bases. Now, I don't know whether our staff in Dhaka would help at all, but obviously if all 30 of you turned up and said, can I come and see what you do and work with you for a bit, that might be a problem. But you don't know, if you don't ask, it certainly won't happen. But unfortunately, the kind of thing that you were asking about is only going to be possible really for staff inside the BBC or people who are based in the UK. But all that could happen with the Dhaka Bureau is they could say no. So I would ask the question.
Well, I would add one thing with this. Is it possible to, I'm sorry, I was, there was echoing. I'm sorry about that. Well, I was, adding with Bijoy that, is it possible to, do internship at BBC, being a, not a native, English speaker as we are not native speaker, we have other language. So is it possible to do journalism in BBC at UK, being from other country?
Well, I mean, obviously it would depend. As I'm sure you're aware, unfortunately, Britain has been has changed recently lots of the rules about who can come into this country because of Brexit, and it's tightened up immigration more generally. Now, if you can get into this country, then things may be possible. But don't forget, we do have a BBC Bangla service, and they would be looking for native Bangla speakers who also can speak English. So that would be another avenue to get in contact with the BBC Bangla service to see whether they have any openings. Or ultimately, if you can say to them, look, I've made this story, you might be interested in it, that may be more productive than just saying, hello, is there any way I can help you? If you can actually give them something, that may be another way to get in. But I can't promise anything.
All right.
I have another question, sir.
So we are going to finish the session.
Oh, okay. Okay, no problem. Okay.
You can ask quickly. All right.
Okay, Mark. Currently, I'm working with FP News agency in Cox's Bazar, and I'm covering the Rohingya refugee. So sometimes I have to cover some political or internal groups clashes in camp or in Cox's Bazar. So, everything in the world is moving fast. I have to give my office the authentic and better film. So how do I cover the political violences or some internal groups clashes or some brackings with the mobile for better quality, better resolutions? And I have to cover that political violence or internal groups violence.
Okay, I think one of the issues is going to be connectivity. It's how much speed you can find on either Wi-Fi or mobile data. Because if you're somewhere and there isn't much speed, then it'll take a long time to send back. You need to think about the balance between, if you stay at a location and there's poor connectivity, it will take a longer time to send your content back, but you're still on location. Or do you go somewhere else? Do you find an internet cafe nearby and plug up to their Wi-Fi, which might be better speed, and then you can send back your content more quickly, but it means you're not on location because you've gone to the cafe. And it's finding that balance between staying at the story, but it might take longer to send because the connection may not be great, or going somewhere else, so you're not on location, but you might send back more quickly. And I think that's the kind of thinking that you need to have in your mind.
All right. So thank you, Marc Settle, and all the participants who have joined today's session. And especially, it's a great honor for us having Marc on board. And he's very busy and conducting training sessions all over the world. And getting him is not so easy. We have been talking to bring Marc. Maybe we started this talking for the last 2 months before, right? So
but we've done it. We've done it now.
Finally, we had it. So it's really an honor for us. And it was really engaging and very interactive sessions, I guess. And students, they have learned so many things and really inspired. And myself, I inspired a lot. And thanks, Mac. And hopefully we'll get back to you again. So, and you will give us your
maybe
time.
Some point in the future. Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes.
Okay.
And
right.
Finally, I will just request everyone, if it's possible, please turn on your camera and let's have a group picture, right? If it's possible, if you're fine, you can turn on the camera. And let's store the memories. All right, so I have seen some good faces of the students. All right. Thanks. So here we go.
Cool.
All right.
Lovely. Okay, well, all have fun, and thanks very much for your time.
Yeah, so with that note, we are going to conclude these sessions and hope we will meet again, either personally, physically, or
hopefully one day.
Yeah, thanks, Marc.
Okay, bye-bye.
That's to say.
Take care, Marc.